Everybody, why don't we do an ancient history news video today? Why not? Let's go down to the famous site of Gobekli Tepe first, near Sanliurfa in Turkey. Here it is right down here. And you get an idea here on Google Earth how this is really pretty high. There is the surrounding landscape, and then Gobekli Tepe is right up here, top of this tepe or hill or mound. Right down here, looks a little different than the surrounding landscape. You can tell people have been here a long time, and you can find a lot of other hills like this around this area. Here's a new story. I will leave all these links below, and they are working on the roof across the way. The tiles, I hope that sound doesn't affect this at all. It says hidden geometric patterns discovered at Turkey's Gobekli Tepe site. It says archaeologists have discovered hidden geometric patterns, the ancient site of Gobekli Tepe. It says the newest findings suggest that the Neolithic hunter-gatherers who built the huge monoliths 11,500 years ago had a greater knowledge of geometry and much more complex social structure than previously thought, and that complex planning techniques were used that were previously considered impossible at the time. Studies on the three oldest stone enclosures at the site reveal that these structures have a hidden geometric pattern, including an equilateral triangle that underlies the entire architectural plan. Here are these three oldest enclosures at Gobekli Tepe, and they did measurements, and it comes out to an equilateral triangle. Why would they do that? So they are now kind of rethinking that maybe these were built all at the same time, and geometry was very important to the building of this. Let's move on. Next story, let's talk about this area of the world. North of Australia, near Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, this area right here. Here's a story that just came out today, and once again, I will leave all these links below. It says, evidence of late Pleistocene human colonization of isolated islands beyond Wallace's Line. And here is a map of the area. And the Wallace's Line is probably a new term for some. This is a pretty interesting article if you want to check it out. Here are some 11,000-year-old shell fishhooks. But it says here, the islands beyond Wallace's Line are ideal places to test the adaptive differences between our species and other hominins. These islands were never connected to the mainland Southeast Asia during the Pleistocene and would have ensured that hominins had to cross water to reach it. And that's what this story goes into, just figuring out how and when people got to certain areas in this region. It says here, using the principle, you are what you eat, researchers analyzed powdered hominin tooth enamel from 26 individuals dated between 42,000 and 1,000 years ago to explore the types of resources they consumed during tooth formation. So this really went back a long time, 42,000 years ago. They were studying what people ate. Here's one of the sites they were researching here. Just one of those stories you cannot briefly cover. I learned a lot reading this, and I have covered areas in this part of the world, but this is a pretty cool article, and a look at artifact going back, they say, 11,000 years, made out of shell here to catch fish. Next story, let's go down to Bulgaria. Lyaskovets, right down here. Pretty interesting find that relates to something I've talked about recently. Here's the city right down here. The find was made by the monastery over here somewhere. A burial mound was located. Here's a story. This came out yesterday. Ostrich egg vessel. And I made that video a couple weeks ago about all the ostrich eggs that were traded in ancient times. It says silver Thracian horseman found in Roman era burial mound near Bulgaria's Lyaskovets. Here's a look at some of the archaeologists and the artifacts that were found at the site. It says a wide range of highly intriguing artifacts, such as an ostrich egg turned into a vessel and a gold-plated silver fibula featuring the Thracian horseman deity, have been discovered in rescue excavations of a Thracian burial mound from the Roman era. Here's a look at the ostrich egg they found. Pretty interesting. The holes put into it, and they say this was turned into a vessel. Here are some other artifacts from the site. But this place, the Romans conquered here in the early to mid 1st century, and the Thracians kind of became integrated into the Roman way of life. Let's move on. Next story, why don't we go down to Luxor in Egypt here. We all have heard about famous Luxor, and I will show this about every video that I do on Luxor here. Down here, ancient man-made harbor here. The Nile was once very large from side to side, and right there is an ancient harbor. Here's a story that came out 8 hours ago. Mummy of ancient Egyptian teenager buried in fine jewelry discovered in Luxor. And here is the coffin with the face of the person, the living face, made to represent the soul of the person going on in the afterlife, the living soul. The teenager was 15 or 16 when she died during the 17th dynasty of Egypt, roughly 1550 BC, something like that. And they were doing some searching for a general at Thutmose III when they came across this burial. Here's the jewelry that was found with the burial. Some necklaces mainly there. That's pretty cool. Here's a description of the artifacts. One ring was fashioned out of bone while the other was made of metal and held an embedded blue glass bead with a string wrapped around it. Talks about the necklaces here. The third necklace was a treasure even by today's standards. The 24-inch long necklace had 74 pieces, including gemstones, one called carnelian, amber, blue glass, quartz. And according to the Egyptian Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, it also supported 2 scarabs, including one showing Horus, the god depicted as a falcon, and 5 amulets. Here's a scan of the mummy. The mummy was found to have a tubular object in the skull. They later found out that that was a device that they used to remove the brain before the mummification processes. Here's that tubular device that was found inside of the mummy, and this is just a very common practice done before mummification, removing of the organs and the brain. But this is only the second type device like this that was ever found in a mummy discovered in Egypt. Fifth and final story, let's go down to Greece today. This is called Evros right down here. Discovery was made right down here in this region. Pretty interesting discovery was made down here. Let's just read. It says ancient Greek site where men were buried with their horses to be restored. This story just came out. This isn't a recent discovery. Archaeologists say that 4 members of a rich family who died successively were cremated and buried at the site. And the large burial tumulus at Doxipara was built in memory of them. Here is a look at some of the remains and artifacts here. It says in these pits of the burial tumulus of Doxipara, a number of objects were also discovered that accompanied the dead to the other world, according to the traditions at that time. Clay and bronze pottery, lamps, lanterns, weapons, jewelry were among the findings. Here's another look at the site here. The people buried with their horses. It says what makes the burial tumulus at Doxipara important is the discovery of 5 carriages buried together with 5 horses around the tumulus. Such findings have been found in Asia and Europe, but this is the first discovery specifically in Greece. 4-wheel carriages were used for transport of the dead to incineration and burial. Pretty interesting story. I think that'll wrap it up. That was ancient news stories from around the world. Hope you thought that was cool. You all have a very safe day.